We're over halfway through a school year unlike any other. How are our students, parents, and teachers coping with changes from COVID-19? How have our education leaders handled the unpredictable? And what lies ahead? Tonight, Fox Carolina, the school station, presents Education in a Pandemic, sponsored by Wilderness at the Smokies.
Good evening, I'm Cody Alcorn.
And I'm Victoria Carmen. Thanks for joining us tonight at 11. We're spending a special half an hour digging into the state of education in South Carolina, nearly a year into the coronavirus pandemic.
With the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine and a return to in-person learning, we've seen some big changes in recent weeks. Tonight, we're sitting down one-on-one with State Education Superintendent Molly Spearman to hear what she has to say about teachers getting the vaccine and her own battle with COVID-19.
Plus, high school athletes eager to get back into the game. We'll take you to basketball playoffs and the spring sports schedule.
And we're digging into how disruption from the pandemic has impacted students' grades. When we started looking at all the changes this school year, we wanted to make sure we heard from some of those who are impacted the most. So we talked with students across the upstate and asked them how they're feeling about everything at the halfway point.
It changed a lot different when I got in kindergarten.
I get to sit next to some of my friends, but there is plexiglass between us.
I wish it was back to normal, where you could have 4 to 5 people at a table. I like going in person. I just wish it wasn't COVID-19.
I really want to have my 8th grade dance, but I understand that that probably can't happen.
Just like to thank our teachers for trying to make this as easy and we can just try to relax as far as we can.
Well, students feeling the impacts of those changes at school, and we wanted to find out how it's affecting their grades.
Classroom achievement has taken somewhat of a hit. State and local leaders say English, language arts, and math are the areas where students have struggled the most. Fox Carolina's Jarvis Robertson has been digging into what school districts are seeing among students and what they're doing to improve grades.
Yeah, that's right, Cody. Victoria. According to the South Carolina Education Oversight Committee, 7 out of 10 students in grades 3 through 8 are projected to not meet their grade level standards. Now, I had a chance to speak with multiple school districts right here in the upstate to find out how those students are doing in the classroom.
Probably for all educators has been the most challenging year that we've ever had.
Class is in session and we're still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. As a direct result, student achievement has fallen in some areas. Here's Anderson 5.
We definitely saw increasing failing grades from students that were in the virtual program.
Looking at this chart for grades 1 through 12, it shows a sharp increase in falling grades across all 3 group settings. Blue represents the 1920 school year and gold is for the current year. Middle school is where the number of failing grades more than doubles and shows students struggling in at least one core area.
If we pull out the virtual numbers, we're pretty much in line with what we typically see as far as failing grades for students across grades and content areas.
And Greenville School District leaders say they've also seen an increase in failures.
The number of Fs have been typically this year about 3 times the number that they have been traditionally in years past.
Once students return to face-to-face learning, grades began to normalize in some areas, but there's still room for improvement.
It was pretty much across the board for first quarter, second quarter as well, though elementary's Fs did drop, over from first quarter to second quarter. Middle school and high school, slight dip in middle school, high school pretty much remained the same.
Virtual schooling is also a factor in their increase. The core content areas which saw the most of students struggle were English, language arts, which includes reading, and math. That for both Greenville and Anderson 5. I reached out to Pickens County School District to see what student achievement looks like during the pandemic. School officials say
preliminary results for our core courses in high school, and that was an 89% passage rate.
However, I'm told they didn't have data to compare for the previous year or breakdown among the core areas. To address this critical need for student achievement, Greenville County School District plans to spend $38 million in CARES funding on remediation, enrichment programs, and transportation. In Anderson 5, targeted efforts in the classroom and district-wide initiatives will be the difference in getting students back to acceptable standards.
Realistically, we really need to think about the intensive summer programs that we could offer students to really work with those and target those kids that are behind and work with them on getting them caught back up so that they could start out next year, hopefully on grade level.
Those school districts that I did have a chance to speak with have phased their students back to the in-person classroom settings. Now, less students are opting for that complete online classroom. Reporting live in Greenville tonight, I'm Jarvis Robertson, Fox Carolina News.
Jarvis, thanks so much. Well, it's not just about grades, but also keeping kids healthy, and we know there are a lot of questions out there.
Oh, absolutely. And we are joined by Dr. James Feisty tonight from AnMed Health. Live, of course. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, Doctor. Our first question for you. Districts say most COVID cases are being spread outside of school. So what should parents or guardians be mindful of to really help stop the spread when students are not in school?
Well, as you can see, I'm wearing my mask tonight, and I think that's probably the most important message I can send. Is that seems to be the most important thing to prevent this from spreading. Is everyone needs to wear their masks, both the person and the people with them. A lot of the cases we've seen here at the office have always been associated with somebody not wearing a mask. I had one family saying, "Oh gosh, you know, I wear my mask all the time," and then it turns out, well, my friends don't, and then they ended up testing positive. So I think that's the most important thing.
And we've seen the deadly case of Miss C in the upstate, and I think when parents hear about this, some of them freak out, and rightfully so. It's rare, but it's dangerous if it happens. What are some of the symptoms that parents need to look out for?
So just like everything else with COVID, it's really unpredictable. I mean, thankfully it's incredibly rare, but when it happens, it's tragic. What you'll see with it is it's usually after the illness, and so some of the kids will have recovered from COVID. Other kids will actually have had an asymptomatic, and you didn't even know they were sick. And they come on very quickly. Typically, the most common symptom of MIS is actually gastrointestinal. They'll develop very bad vomiting, severe abdominal pain, diarrhea. About half of kids will have fevers and a rash with it, and actually coughing is much less common in children than with adults.
Now, the vaccine, as we know, has not been approved for those 16 and under. What is the current guidance for kids and the COVID vaccine, and is a child-approved version in the works at all?
So yeah, we're looking forward to getting a vaccine for kids. I'll tell you, we've been waiting with bated breath. I mean, right now the approval is 16 and above. I've actually started to see a couple of my patients who are older being able to get the vaccine because they're taking care of younger siblings with special needs. I know that there's ongoing studies right now on children down as young as age 5, maybe even younger, and I'm hopeful that we're going to see a vaccine later this summer.
All right, well, Dr. Feisty, thanks so much for staying up with us tonight and joining us here for this special, and hopefully we'll have you back on here soon to answer some more questions.
Yes, thank you, Doctor.
Absolutely.
Well, we're turning now to funding. More than $1 billion went to South Carolina school districts during the pandemic. That money came from the CARES Act, but how are districts spending all of that money?
Fox Carolina's education reporter Grace Runkle explains.
Each of South Carolina's school districts must log how they spend more than $1 billion in federal aid. We obtained those financial records, poured through the spreadsheets, and crunched the numbers. Here's what we found. When the first round of funding went out over the summer, the focus was on PPE.
Face masks, hand sanitizer, plexiglass, things that 12 months ago you never would have imagined spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on.
Of the 16 districts we received reports for, all but 4 also cashed in on PPE. But the top category by far was technology, with upstate districts spending more than $6.2 million. In Spartanburg 3, the money paid for more laptops.
In the lower grades, PK through 2, we had classroom sets. We expanded that.
Back in Anderson 5, hotspots.
And we have over 2,000 kids who are still in our virtual academy. Many of them don't have access or have kind of spotty access at best.
But going forward, the focus is different. Districts say the first round of funding was like triage. Now they can think long term.
There's going to be a lot of money expended to catch students up.
Anderson 5 will offer a full-fledged summer school program for the first time.
Summer school is going to be a much larger program and a much larger expense than it's ever been.
Max says they're past spending on wipes and sprays. Their next round of funding, about $2.8 million, will go toward air purification systems.
We'll be able to make a huge impact on air quality with that.
Many educators say COVID-19 has changed schools forever. Max says it's changed how they budget, too.
But hopefully we'll be able to get back to normal somewhat, but I don't think we'll ever be totally back to normal.
Grace Runkle, Fox Carolina News.
I learned that even being careful, you can still get it.
Our one-on-one with the State Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman.
And hundreds of teaching jobs unfilled across the state. What lawmakers are doing to close the gap.
You're watching Education in a Pandemic on Fox Carolina, the school station, sponsored by Wilderness at the Smokies. We now return you to Education in a Pandemic on Fox Carolina, the school station, sponsored by Wilderness at the Smokies.
In an exclusive interview, I sat down with Superintendent of Education Molly Spearman inside her office in Columbia. She explained why it's important for teachers to get vaccinated, why kids need to be back in the classroom 5 days a week, and her own personal family experience with COVID-19. March 15th, 2020, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster ordered all 1,250 public schools to close. Then, on April 22nd,
We've decided not to reopen the schools for the rest of the school year.
Fast forward to 2021, the roadmap to getting teachers and all students back into the classroom 5 days a week continues to be redrawn as we learn more about the COVID-19 virus and the developments of new vaccines.
And my faith teaches me that perseverance builds your character. And so I really do believe that we're going to be stronger people because of this COVID-19 pandemic.
South Carolina Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman.
We have certainly done the best we can with the knowledge that we had a year ago.
The CDC identified 5 mitigation strategies to help cut down the spread of COVID-19 as districts bring back faculty and students for in-person learning. Wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, thoroughly clean the classrooms and buildings, plus contact tracing.
We now know that those 5 mitigation tools, particularly wearing a mask and social distancing, they work. And if we maintain those, we can operate schools safely.
Spearman also believes getting teachers vaccinated is vital in keeping our schools open. In Monday's press briefing by the White House COVID-19 response team, CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky stated CDC's operational strategy includes vaccination for teachers and school staff as an additional layer to protection that can be added to the 5 key layered mitigation strategies. Superintendent Spearman agrees.
No, they do not have to be vaccinated in order to get back to school safely, but we can operate school better if they've been vaccinated.
Spearman says if teachers are vaccinated, it will cut down on quarantining entire classrooms if a teacher is identified through contact tracing.
It really disrupts the operation of our wanting to be back 5 days a week.
In South Carolina, students are slowly returning to in-person learning. Districts have been concentrating on the younger students.
I think now we have the evidence that even our high school students and middle school students can come back 5 days a week safely.
But Spearman says virtual learning will be an option even post-COVID.
In this day and age, you should not have to go to your classroom to get the content knowledge. You should be able to be connected.
As Spearman helps lead and navigate the 70-plus school districts across the state through these unprecedented times, she's also a mom and a wife who knows firsthand the severity of COVID-19.
My son, who thought he had been careful, had dinner with some friends who had been tested, and lo and behold, they came down with the virus. So I learned that even being careful, you can still get it. It's no joke. And our son actually developed pneumonia. I spent a day at the emergency room, sitting outside my car, wondering how he was doing on the inside. It's one of the saddest things that's happened, how families can't be together when they're under that kind of stress and uncertainty.
Spearman hopes through all the uncertainty, people will see the value of our schools.
They're not there just for content, but they bring tremendous social and emotional support for our children and our families. And for sure, we all need to say thank you to teachers. They've done a great job.
A committee hearing was scheduled this week in the House regarding moving teachers into a Phase 1A. Governor McMaster has doubled down, though, on his stance against moving teachers up in the vaccination rollout plan. We have more education stories you need to know available right now on demand anytime on the Fox Carolina app, on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV.
While the Department of Education urging districts to survey their teachers to determine how many are interested in getting the vaccine. Nearly 123,000 of them and school staff took that survey across the state. Nearly 71,000 said yes, they'll take the COVID-19 vaccine when it's available. It's about 58%. Meanwhile, upstate districts are working on plans for when they can give teachers the shot. All 7 Spartanburg districts are working with Cherokee and Union County schools on a mass vaccination clinic. A spokesperson for Spartanburg District 5 said the vaccine won't be mandatory, but they hope to offer it as soon as possible.
This is a personal choice, and we respect that for all of our teachers and our staff members. We do believe that they deserve to be protected, just like the most vulnerable members of our population. But again, we are at the mercy of the state government, so we'll have to rely on their decision.
But it's not just about getting our teachers back into the classroom. It's also about getting more teachers. The annual teacher supply and demand report shows South Carolina is still in the midst of a shortage, and the pandemic is not helping. About 6,000 teachers did not return to their position last year. It's fewer than recent years, but that's really where the good news stops. 36% of first-year teachers left their job. That contributed to 700 vacancies across the state on the first day of school. That is a 26% increase from the year before, and less than a quarter of new hires graduated from a South Carolina program.
Fox Carolina education reporter Grace Runkle back with us, breaking down a slew of new legislation, hoping to turn those numbers around.
I'm a huge believer in messages.
David Spearman got his first message his senior year at Easley High School. There was no teacher to lead the theater program, so he went without his favorite class.
I decided then and there that I was going to become a theater teacher.
34 years, 5 school districts, and a couple signs later, he got his final message.
COVID reared its ugly head. When the county said, we're going back face to face, I couldn't take that risk.
It's been nearly 7 months since he retired, but his mind is still on those in the classroom.
Teacher morale right now is at an all-time low.
Lawmakers in Columbia have introduced more than half a dozen bills hoping to change that, guaranteeing a 30-minute lunch break, creating a bonus system, and limiting the work week to 37.5 hours. If it's any more than that, one bill calls for overtime.
The problem really goes back to the pay and the working conditions of what teachers are expected to do. And we've been, I want to say, ringing this bell for a couple years now.
Sherry East is the director of the South Carolina Education Association. She spent 27 years teaching science, but worries the state is losing its chance to secure lifelong educators. The 2020 Teacher Supply and Demand report shows 2,500 teachers with fewer than 6 years of experience left their jobs last fall.
That should be sending up red flags to every person right now.
One bill proposes a one-time stipend of $3,500 for teachers to put toward a down payment on a house. Another looks to establish a teacher bill of rights.
If you care about children in South Carolina, restore the profession.
Although the pandemic forced Spearman out of the classroom, he says it's at least drawn more attention to education. But he's not sure if these proposals are actually a message that change is coming.
We've just been burned so many times. We feel like Charlie Brown looking at Lucy, like holding the football. And she's saying, no, really, I'm not going to jerk it away this time.
Grace Runkle, Fox Carolina News.
Well, high school sports, like everything else during the pandemic, looks a little different in the Palmetto State, but the competition as fierce as ever. The basketball playoffs officially in full swing. State championship games set for next week. We'll tell you which upstate teams took one step closer tonight. Plus, spring sports right around the corner. Whether you're waiting on baseball, softball, or soccer season to get here, we'll tell you what you need to know. Those details and more are yours straight ahead. Hey there, I'm Aaron Cheslak. The winter sports season's starting to wind down. High school basketball teams in the midst of the playoffs with some big games tonight. We'll fly around quickly to update you, starting with the boys in 3A. Seneca and Jared Rogers finds Amari McAlope here. Bobcats get past Blue Ridge 73-63. They now face Keenan on Saturday for the Upper State crown. That's because Keenan knocked off Woodruff 64-48 tonight to earn that game against Seneca. The Wolverines with some good outside shooting here from Zy Scott, but a great season comes to an end for the Wolverines. In Class A, Southside Christian moves on with a 60-50 win. Messiah Harris gets the strip, takes it to the rack. Sabres move on to the Upper State Championship in Class A on Saturday. Girls bracket now. Westside's Anaya Harper banging home the triple here to lead the Rams past Greenville in 4A, 58-47. Westside onto the Upper State Championship. And in 2A, Blacksburg gets past Christ Church 54-42. Michaela Logan helping lead the charge. They'll host Saluda in the Upper State Championship Saturday night in Class 2A. Meanwhile, spring sports about to start up. Student athletes obviously chomping at the bit after they had their season canceled last year due to the pandemic. Lacrosse, the only one going as of now, but they'll all be in action by mid-March. Soccer on March 1st, tennis, golf, track on the 8th, then baseball and softball a week later. Postseasons get going in May for most. Here's hoping these young men and women have a safe and full spring season. They certainly deserve it. All right, with COVID protocols in place, students at the Greenville Middle Academy couldn't go on any field trips this year. But when they realized they had a connection to some friends all over the world, they took a field trip through Zoom. Sports anchor Amanda Keene has that story.
When the pandemic hit, Furman closed their gates and sent everyone home. That included student athletes from the men's soccer team who live overseas. So when head coach Doug Allison heard that the students at his wife's middle school needed a staycation, he offered up his team. That's how Luke, Arnor, and other players ended up zooming into Mrs. Simonetti's Global Studies class.
I can teach the subject all day long, but nothing's going to be getting firsthand perspective from someone who actually lives in these countries that we discuss.
So the players show their hometowns, everywhere from Reykjavik, Iceland to Wales to a small village outside of London, and the kids got a kick out of it.
The first time I can remember having kids stop me in the hall asking me, I heard we're doing such and such in class. I haven't taken part yet. I can't wait.
It was just as fun for the college kids to show their hometowns and to answer some of the middle schoolers' questions like, how do you ask a girl on a date and what do you eat?
Great to Zoom with the kids and just show them the area that you've kind of grown up in. And because I'm from a small village called Orawas, which is within Derbyshire, there's only about 2,000 people there.
Really enjoyed this experience. I thought it was a lot of fun to show the kids, especially some of the special things regarding Iceland, like the Northern Lights, all the volcanoes, the glaciers, the midnight sun. So all of those things were really exciting for me to show them.
It got the kids excited about learning again, something they haven't felt in a while with all of the challenges of this past year.
Even though the gates are back open and the student athletes are back on campus, they want to continue this tradition of sharing their home countries with these young students. With the Paladins in Greenville, I'm Amanda Keene, Fox Carolina Sports.
Amanda, thanks. Now, coming up after the break, South Carolina's biggest school district tells us how they've improved e-learning and now more prepared going forward.
We now return you to Education in a Pandemic on Fox Carolina, the school station, sponsored by Wilderness at the Smokies.
Although changes from COVID-19 haven't always been smooth, upstate school districts say what we've been through in the past year has them better prepared than ever for the future.
Now, Greenville County Schools shared with us some things that they've learned, like areas where mobile Wi-Fi hotspots are most needed and how to switch thousands of students to e-learning overnight. Safe to say schools are ready to handle the unpredictable.
If COVID came back in a big way, or the COVID variant forced us into an e-learning situation again, I think we're better equipped now to handle it than ever before. We'll just have to wait and see what the future holds. That's the big thing. There's as much planning as we do for fall. There's that big question mark that looms over everything. What will COVID look like?
And that is the big question. What will school look like in the fall? We don't have those answers, and we're all in this together. So we will see how this continues on as more vaccines roll out, and hopefully these numbers continue to go down.
Right. We're with you every step of the way through those changes, and stay with us for the latest updates starting on the morning news tomorrow at 4:30. And that'll do it for us tonight. Good night.
Thanks for watching Fox Carolina News. Watch us live wherever you are, on our mobile, on our streaming news app. And you can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV.